Well, good day,
Mm. Good day.
good evening, perhaps, if
Mm.
you're watching this in the evening.
Mm.
Welcome to Reconcile.
Mm.
Welcoming my guest, dear
Mm.
brother,
Mm.
dear friend,
Mm.
fellow colleague, Benoit Forest.
Mhm.
Today, on this show, on this podcast,
Mm.
two men coming together,
Mm.
two fellow therapists coming to have a conversation, a dialogue, which I'm really excited to talk to you
Mm.
and to see where this goes. Because even when this is not being recorded, my experience in knowing you and getting to know you and you getting to know me is transformative.
Mm.
Your
Mhm.
presence in my life is a
Mm.
transformative force.
Mm.
And whatever happens here and what has happened in our unfolding
Mhm.
and getting to know one another and this life, it's been profound.
Mhm.
It's been a journey.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed, is to say the least.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Mhm.
let's see where this goes. And I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself to the space, to
Mm.
to this precious audience.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm,
It's really an honor to be here with you.
mhm,
I feel the same in your presence in my life and the transformation that I couldn't have imagined
mhm,
moving through.
mhm,
And it always feels good to hear that from you.
mhm.
It feels affirming. It's not the first time that he's told me, so it's not a surprise. There's a lot of love here.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself is um, important to share.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
So, yeah, thanks for inviting me to be here with you. I also love our dialogue
mhm,
anytime that we connect.
mhm,
And the processes and the processing
mhm.
that we can move through, which feels really supportive to
Yeah.
my growth and evolution.
Mhm,
Benoit Forest. I come from Saint Boniface, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I kind of recently, thanks to a lot of the experiences that we've been having together, am acknowledging um, my role, I guess, in society, in the great family of humanity,
mhm,
and recognizing the importance of connecting to my experience and leading from my heart.
mhm,
And so, working as a therapist, doing both individual and group therapy, working with music therapy, voice opening, voice activation,
mhm,
somatic, psychodrama,
mhm,
movement, dance.
mhm,
These are all modalities that are very dear to me.
mhm,
Psychedelic therapy as well,
mhm,
ceremonial space.
mhm.
These are some areas that we share as well,
Yeah.
which has been so beautiful
Mhm.
in my own journey
Yeah.
to deepen, to explore, to play,
Yeah.
to fumble, to
Mhm,
create,
mhm,
to rub against the edges of my egoic comfort zone
mhm,
and definitely dissolve
mhm,
these edges as well.
mhm,
Um, shadow work
mhm.
applied,
Yeah.
spirituality applied
Mhm,
is what feels very alive when
mhm.
we come together,
Yeah.
and what I'm applying more and more to
Mhm,
my professional environments and to my
mhm,
relational and social
mhm,
interpersonal dynamics as
mhm,
well.
mhm.
Um, yeah, that feels like a good
Yeah.
introduction to the space, I
I
think.
want to ask, is there
Mhm.
something that really stands out in this moment in what you just listed there as things you're involved in or practices you're involved in,
Mm.
if you call them practices. I mean, I see those are
Mm.
practices from one
Mm.
view, but
Mm.
I guess I want to ask you, is there something of substantial significance that you've been learning lately, or in particular, that's like
Mm.
really like landing for you in your
Mm.
work and in your personal
Mm.
life, in your heart?
Mhm. There's a specific example that comes up.
Okay.
And as I'm thinking of like the phases in my life that I've moved through,
Mm-hmm.
learning something, applying it,
Yeah.
learning something, applying it,
Yeah.
testing it out
Yeah.
in the world, in my
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And the theme that has followed me for a long time, that has felt very important, like a guiding principle,
Mm-hmm.
is integrity,
Mm-hmm.
being in integrity,
Sure.
being good, doing uh, doing the right thing,
Mm.
showing up in the right way,
Ah,
kind of as a guiding principle.
yeah.
So that's, I would say, is like the thread that's been very present for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so specifically recently,
Mm-hmm.
there's an application that I'm practicing, which is seeing the divine in another,
Mm-hmm.
seeing myself in another
Yeah.
as I come to encounter someone,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing the dance of um, interconnection
Mm-hmm.
and this idea of like individuality,
Mm-hmm.
individualities meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and the sense that everyone I meet is an extension of me.
Mm-hmm.
And how would I show up? How would I listen? How would I counsel, support um, in connection
Mm-hmm.
while being aware of my own connection
Mm-hmm.
to self? So it feels like a rich topic
Mm-hmm.
to explore interconnection
Mm-hmm.
and connection to self,
Mm-hmm.
and holding both whenever I meet
Yeah.
other people, and applying that principle.
Mm-hmm. Let's say you're applying that life view or principle,
Mm-hmm.
seeing the divine in another,
Mm-hmm.
who is me,
Mm-hmm.
I am you, you are me. How
Mm-hmm.
might that apply in your work as a therapist, say when you're meeting someone for the first time? For
Yeah.
example, it was like coming probably with an expectation, like I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck. I have trauma to heal. I got some things I need to work through, old grief, these patterns, whatever it is, that the reason that they might be coming to
Mm-hmm.
see a counselor. And so, yeah, can you help maybe ground us into like how that might apply for you? Meet someone.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, in that setting, there's also, I guess, a professional and ethical responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to show up in a space,
Sure.
to, as you brought up recently, guide the process
Mm.
of that time together.
Yeah.
And needing to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say where that principle of seeing the divine in another comes into play
Mm-hmm.
is really inviting
Ah,
others,
yeah.
the clients that I'm working with,
Mm-hmm.
to express and be heard by me as a reflection
Mm-hmm.
of who they are.
Right.
So I want to invite them to be themselves. And in the sense of providing assistance for
Mm-hmm.
them, it would be to really apply my curiosity
Mm.
of who they are.
Yeah.
So really being curious,
Yeah.
as opposed to, trying to find the thing
Yeah.
that needs to be fixed,
Sure.
or trying to like understand the pattern or
Yeah.
see the.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's part of what curiosity brings to light,
Sure.
is the pattern, or
Mm-hmm.
how there could be a new perspective brought to see things from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really this curiosity, like,
Mm-hmm.
who are you?
Mm.
Like, how do you see the world?
Yeah.
What's important to you?
Yeah.
And really getting a sense of that,
Mm-hmm.
so that there can be a collaboration in exploring, like, okay, thanks for naming your values and what you want to experience in life. And by giving space for that individual or unique perspective, it allows me to connect with, oh, like I hadn't, I don't necessarily engage with this in my life in a way, or if I do, then there are things that I can share or impart. And it really helps to bring an element of connection and co-regulation into the space. And that feels like an applied, useful thing right away.
The word that comes to mind as well to complement that is attunement.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in our intro here, settling in, I feel myself attuning to myself and with you. It's an expression of co-regulation.
Yeah.
Like we're weaving something in here. What's the role? We talked a little bit recently in another conversation on this topic of truth and honesty. And we named something that really stood out to me, that honesty is the narrow path. You're speaking of curiosity and almost an app as a method, a way of being, applying curiosity and engaging as a human being with other human beings, in yourself, in your work. What about honesty? Tell us something a bit about how that's weaving itself into your life and your work.
Yeah, thanks. That was a really fun conversation to have because it was just arising in my awareness as we were talking, which feels really generative and creative. And so it's still something that I'm learning about, and the way that I'm applying, I would say, more in my personal relationships with my friendships and my colleagues and roommates and stuff like that, is to the best of my ability lead with honesty, to begin with myself. What am I experiencing? And to bring that into a container to potentially be witnessed by another. This is my honest expression. And so the way that it made sense to me in that honesty is a narrow path is that, it's either true and honest and I can speak the truth, or it's not. There's a lot of expression that could not be honest, but the honest thing is one thing. So that's kind of how I see it, as a narrow path. And it also requires my choosing to be honest. Where it calls me to action. It calls me to willingly bring attention to, voice, or at least be aware of, and to hold the truth of a situation. Whereas I can recall many times in my life that I have perhaps glimpsed the truth, didn't want to hold it. It felt too difficult, or it would mean that I put myself in a vulnerable situation if I admit the truth. For example, I want to connect with someone. That's maybe the truth of my experience. But if I'm not honest about that, my trying to connect with someone could come in perhaps a manipulative way of not actually naming my intention and trying to take someone's attention, or trying to be perhaps seen as needing help, or like it comes in a little sideways. And this is where like shadow behaviors can come into play if I'm not being honest about what's occurring for me in the moment.
Do you view your work in part then supporting people in getting honest with themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that in and of itself is a challenging thing to come to terms with, because truth can shatter our comfort zones. Truth puts into question what we have come to believe is solid. And so there's inherent discomfort in that. And our society has generally taught us to avoid pain and discomfort at all costs.
Mm.
And therefore we generally aren't equipped to engage with discomfort and pain.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, even just being aware of the truth that will bring likely discomfort and pain
Mm-hmm.
is just difficult to do.
Mm.
We're not well versed in that
Mm.
practice. And so,
Mm.
yes, part of the therapeutic process that I like to engage in,
Mm.
and I know that you do as well,
Mm-hmm.
and always appreciate your curiosity in my processes,
Mm-hmm.
is what's actually happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
What is the truth of your experience?
Yes.
And yeah, it can take different, I guess, strategies or different angles to start to get in relationship with the discomfort that truth brings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So honesty as a step can be explored, especially in a one-on-one. It's much easier in a one-on-one because we can attune first.
Mm.
Whereas when there are multiple people, it can be more challenging to attune to a
Mm.
space.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also part of why group therapy is so valuable, is that we learn to encounter discomfort in a social
Mm-hmm.
setting
Mm-hmm.
and to build resilience
Mm-hmm.
to then allow discomfort to be present and still navigate without assuming too much or
Mm-hmm.
jumping to conclusions or positioning ourselves in certain ways to block things out. You know, all these social strategies that we have,
Sure.
right, to avoid
Mm-hmm.
the discomfort. So
Mm-hmm.
learning to hold both the discomfort, to name it, and being honest with ourselves and with others
Mm-hmm.
can help to alleviate these inner stresses
Mm-hmm.
that come up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lots coming up in my mind
Mm.
now. Well, one, there's a book called Let Love In, Jake Kaufman, really
Mm.
wonderful book. But the title, Let Love In, subtitle, The Pain Stops When the Truth Starts.
Mm. Mm.
What do you think about that?
Not familiar with the book, so
Sure.
thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And the pain stops when the truth starts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of this quote I brought up recently. I forget the author. How much will you suffer until you believe?
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of similarity there with how much do we allow truth into our experience? And all of the ways that we deny truth or we live in some kind of illusionary state
Sure.
incurs pain, perhaps suffering, depending on how we respond to it. You know, pain as we know during any learning process, there's potential for pain in any growth process.
Sure.
I think a really good example is like working out.
Oh.
Like there's an element of efforting and discomfort
Sure.
of like, you know, doing another rep or
Sure.
like, you know, doing the next piece.
Yeah.
Yoga is another good example for that.
Mm-hmm.
Willingly going into a space of discomfort and strengthening ourselves through that process can alleviate the chronic experience of pain or suffering. And what I love about yoga, especially in its recognizing truth, is that there's a lot of bridging opposites or like understanding paradox through the practice, which is much more than a workout in that sense. And so part of a practice that feels really supportive is not only engaging our being physically in movement or practice, but also applying an understanding of what we're doing and what this yoga, for example,
Sure.
meditation, mindfulness, what these practices help us to develop. And that there's a truth in bridging opposites that oftentimes people have difficulty with. Because a big illusion we live in is we are all separate. We're all separate beings. We see things very differently. We don't want the same things.
Yeah.
Someone could be dangerous because of their worldview. And so we hold people away from us. And that's a big illusion that we live in, where the truth of our interconnection can really challenge, our understanding of someone's behavior. And why would they do that? If we're all connected, why is that person doing that? Like, I disagree with that. And so that's like a pretty meta example of how truth can shatter the illusions that we're holding onto. That gives us a sense of safety from people who might be dangerous. But then what does it imply if we start to accept other people as belonging to our interconnectedness? When we start to question what's right and wrong, we start to question these things, and that can be really uncomfortable as well.
I'm prompted to sort of integrate our connection, our relationship into this conversation and ask you, because I think you've said at times, like in some version or another, that whether it's my being or our relationship, that's like challenged a lot of conditioning or assumptions or projections maybe in you. That's weaving back this topic of our connection's been like transformative for me too. And I'm just curious if there's anything in particular that, if we were to invite this into the conversation, that about me, my being, or our just how we relate or how I relate with you, that has shattered maybe some of these truths or invited like a shift in perspectives. Is there something that comes to mind?
Last night was a really interesting example of a continuation of you representing a friend, a brother, someone that I am deepening in connection with. We're sharing space in intimate ways with our music playing and movement and psychedelic exploration. There's a lot of vulnerability and sharing some deep parts of ourselves. And that exploration is traditionally unfamiliar to me in terms of my peers as boys, teenagers, young men. I haven't had a lot of men with whom I've been really able to be intimate with in that way and hold a friendship that feels reciprocal. And so through our relating from the beginning of just starting to jam together, music, and all of the things that would arise as I am unburdening this knot of what does it mean to relate to a man, right? And realizing that I've hidden a lot of the things that I love to do, expression through movement and voice and philosophy and ideas and depth. I haven't done that with so many of my friends. I guess part of the conditioning is that's boring, or let's not go there. That's dangerous. That's stupid. That's irrelevant. It's not important. All of these kind of conditionings, judgments, that I've internalized and accepted these illusions that the way of exploring life in this way is not okay, because it would turn my friends away or they didn't want to engage with that. And so as I've allowed myself to explore these things in relation to you,
Mm-hmm.
all of these fears of I'm going to be rejected. He's not going to be my friend.
Ah.
He doesn't want to hear these things. This is actually dangerous.
Ah.
Have come up.
Mm.
And that's why it's been so transformative, because I've been through my training as a therapist, I've also gathered the tools to recognize that I can lean in to those moments of fear as opposed to continuing to strengthen them.
Ah.
And this is where honesty has become a really important path,
Right.
because I've shared with you my discomforts in the settings we've shared.
Sure.
I've spoken the projections or the transference that I have been going through as it was happening.
Yeah.
And you've received me there.
Sure.
And so I've slowly accumulated proof that this connection is strong and can handle and weather all of the inner storming that's happening.
Sure.
Right. So those are examples. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, this is a part of what I feel is a theme in what you're sharing is I want to share the word authenticity is coming to mind. And you expressed, throughout childhood, adolescence, maybe young adulthood times where like the authenticity of your experience, whether in relationship not being met and then being discounted, dismissed, rejected, became tied to a perception that my authenticity is dangerous or that's going to hurt or and then all that is woven into that like likability. Do I belong? It's like this dance between connection, relationship, and authenticity, and like the cost at which, if I'm picking up on some of that in our work and so forth, the cost at which is like a diminishment of the self-expression and authenticity, which is it's a sad loss. It's to me, it conjures a sense of not being fully whole. The topic of integrity comes up and deserves compassion here, because there's a reason then why people, myself included in my lifetime at times, like suppress, oppress, repress, depress, turn into depressed states, depressed moods, and so forth. I'm not going to show myself. I'm not going to share myself. Doing that is dangerous. I'm bad. I'm wrong. I'm guilty. I'm defective. I'm damaged. I'm blah, 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 blah. All these beliefs potentially. And so when you hear you lean in and express elements of how this interaction or relating has supported a somewhat of an unlearning, deconditioning, and a building of proof or evidence, like, oh wait, I'm not rejected here. I feel as though I celebrate you. Yeah. And play like playfully and like watch the dismantling of parts of self that have been protective and like, oh, you mean I can be me here?
Right.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
What a relief.
Yeah.
What a relief.
A novelty.
Novelty.
It's like, what do I do with this? Like, what do I do? I'm not so unfamiliar.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what we provide, though. I feel as though the role and when becoming a therapist, being a therapist is attempting to foster the conditions that support these discoveries. Oh, I mean, I can be me. Wow. Like in that innocence and that vulnerability. Whoa, that's a healing moment for some. And can be like shattering. In various ways. Disorienting. Well, who am I then without these introjections and these beliefs and conditionings that I was fed or learned and embodied, and now they're dismantling. And
there's an identification with these strategies. And so that was a big, the last few years for me have been
Mm-hmm.
this transition between how I identified with all of the conditioning
Mm-hmm.
and slowly like detaching myself from them.
Yeah.
By understanding their place,
Mm.
why they came to be, to protect what is dear to me, which is my essence. And so the transition between letting those go and inviting in clarity around who am I?
Yeah.
What are my values? I've navigated this life diminishing my expression in order to alleviate other people's discomfort around me, then all of a sudden, as I'm allowing myself to be more authentic, I'm noticing the ways in which people are becoming uncomfortable with who I am. And reclaiming that balance between, I'm going to be me and I care about you, but I'm not going to sacrifice who I am just to avoid you feeling discomfort or pain. Because, and this is part of the healing journey that I'm learning, is as I'm leaning into the pain and discomfort and allowing myself to build a relationship with that, I'm realizing how much I'm changing and evolving, and I have more capacity actually to show up in all areas of my life. I'm starting to recognize that by allowing other people to be in their discomfort, they actually get to look at the ways in which they are still believing the conditioning or believing the strategies of who they need to be in order to show up in the world. So it's like, as much as having pain and discomfort is uncomfortable, I also know that that's the path to actually healing, because that is the essence of my being trying to communicate with me, saying there's an imbalance here. And so I want to, as I allow myself to be authentic, I want to allow other people to see and to feel what their inner wisdom is telling them, which is in the form of discomfort and pain. And so now that I understand that that is the path to healing, and I'm not going around poking people and slapping them around and creating discomfort.
You're not doing that?
Well, I mean, not in a disrespectful degree. Yes. But yeah, I know it was a big part of the Saturday, and recognizing the importance of shaking the cage a little bit. It's like, hey, can you see the prison you're in? Can you see the illusion you're holding yourself in?
Yeah.
I'm going to help. I would like to help you see it so that you can engage with the process of being free of it. And that implies discomfort. And so I'm starting to understand that as I am who I am and I uphold my values, other people aren't going to like that. And I can let them, instead of compromising who I am to limit their discomfort, I'm more of myself, and others' discomfort could rise.
Sure.
I'm also learning that what's important as discomfort arises is to stay connected, because that's been my fear. If I create discomfort in others, there will be disconnection. And therefore, I show up as me, allow discomfort to arise, and do my best to remind people that I'm still connected to them and say, I'm here with you in your discomfort.
Yeah.
I'm not going to compromise who I am. I'm not going to abandon you either, and that is like a integral part of the therapeutic relationship as professionals, but also how we heal in our relationships in our lives, is regardless of the anger or the grief or whatever's uncomfortable in an emotional expression or in an experience, we choose to stay connected and to acknowledge that we are connected and to bring attention to that. So that's kind of how I balance it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like offer something as well because
Yeah,
it seems
please.
important. I mean, you mentioned discomfort, pain,
Mm.
but even talking with you right now,
Mm.
I feel a level of comfort,
Mm.
which is a common experience for me. And I wonder about the co-arising. Like, I think, therapeutically speaking in particular, like part of what we are trying to do is actually, you mentioned capacity, support someone in developing, increasing their capacity
Mm.
to be comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, like I can be with this. And like relationally, like there's a lot of relationships that um, don't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be connected with this,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just kind of riffing on this topic of like inviting actually the dynamic of comfort and discomfort,
Mm.
here or with people. I also would like to reflect, like when I see you with other people, like in my observation, you are a likable
Mm.
human.
Mm.
People really enjoy
Mm-hmm.
your presence.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to
Mm-hmm.
be the devil's advocate or whatever
Mm-hmm.
phrase, um, you inspire people.
Mm.
Your expression, your authenticity, like, you know,
Mm.
actually, again, outside looking in, um, I I wouldn't think that you stir discomfort as much as maybe parts of you have believed in the past.
Sure.
And in fact, like people are like, wow, look at this. Like people are drawn to you.
Mm.
I've been out with you, socializing,
Mm-hmm.
getting
Mm-hmm.
love and hugs from people. And like,
Mm.
yeah, so just want to maybe part offering that too. And that the
Mm-hmm.
comfort and like the kindred recognition, I think, that other people see in you and how you are. Like invites, maybe comfort's not even the most accurate word, but relatability. Like that's even I'll just add one last thing is like
Yeah.
even the first time getting to know you is like being drawn to like the level of presence,
Mm.
like the sense of lack of like agenda
Mm.
in the ease at which we could connect.
Mm.
um yeah, these are qualities that I really appreciate about you and people in my life
Mm.
as well.
Mm.
um that again, back to the topic of comfort, like created a sense of comfort or ease, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like easy to be with you,
Yeah.
connect, and like,
Mm.
yeah, so a reflection
Yeah. Thank
offering.
you. Thanks for that. And the kind of exploring, first of all, that paradox, comfort, discomfort, comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Sure.
And yeah, there's a balancing. There's like
Mhm.
a point of tension that's kind of a healthy tension between the two.
Sure.
And it's also reminding me of this concept of safety
Mm. Mm. That's a
because
great, I'm glad you wove that in. Yeah.
yeah, when we feel safe enough to do a courageous or a brave or a dangerous thing, right? To try something new, when we're safe
Mhm.
enough to try something new.
Mm.
So the sense of safety doesn't mean we feel good necessarily,
Yeah.
or we feel pleasant, I'll say.
Mm.
But safety can actually invite courage to be in a state that would otherwise feel
Mm.
too vulnerable or too
Mhm.
dangerous to be in for
Mhm.
some reason.
Mhm.
I appreciate that reflection. Part of me could just associate that to my people pleasing patterns of the past. And this is also part of the integrity or the integration
Mm.
process
Mm.
of all the parts of who we are
Mhm.
that have brought us to this moment.
Sure.
The learnings, the
Mhm.
strategies we've employed, the
Mhm.
practice that we've had,
Mhm.
right? We practice the coping mechanism. We practice it a lot.
Well practiced.
It's well practiced,
Mhm.
right? So it's familiar to us.
Mhm.
And that can be representative of a true gift that we have
Mhm. Mhm.
of being a safe person,
Mm-hmm.
for example, which I have received as reflections before.
Yeah.
I feel really safe with you. Like people would tell me, right?
Yeah.
I feel really safe with you, Benoit.
Mm-hmm.
You just seem to be really grounded, or
Mm-hmm.
you're really listening to me.
Yes.
And on one hand, I could recognize moments in my life where I was doing that for my survival because I needed to know what made you uncomfortable so that I didn't do it, right? So that I could hide myself enough, right?
Sure.
So recognizing that part of my life and also recognizing that it's actually part of my, I guess, toolkit or part of my gifts that I get to offer as I was speaking to really being curious and really inviting someone to express themselves fully because I've felt like I've been repressed for most of my life. I don't want others to go through that. And so I've developed a way to really invite others to be present and to be authentic in their expression to their level of comfort or safety to do so. And so that's something that I've developed, even though the behavior itself can be seen as something that eventually became an interference to my relationships. I'm grateful for that practice of the adaptation to conditioning, of people pleasing, because I actually developed some ways of interacting and relating that are really helpful to people.
Adaptive
Adaptive.
too, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Something that's coming up for me is this theme of coming out of hiding.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
On this topic of authenticity. Coming out of hiding, coming out of denial, and all that comes with. And as you know, I'm really fond of awakening. It's word awakening, but the awakening process, the process of turning the lights on, where the rubber hits the road, and how that applies in all dimensions of our being, how we relate to ourselves and those around us, and our vocations, our work, what we orient ourselves to in this life, and this coming out of hiding, coming out process, liberation, freedom, coming out of hiding, coming out of bondage and ignorance and so forth. More I could say.
The cave is also an interesting metaphor for that.
Yeah. Anything
Plato's
stir
cave
for you on this when I just reflect that?
Well, first of all, I want to commend you for your bravery and your courage in coming out of hiding. You've been very aware of that development in you and noticing the edges that it awakes. And I feel is a really beautiful example.
Maybe to help people, like, what have you noticed? This might be helpful to ground what you're talking about in like an example when you see this human being called John, this character in this stage of life.
Well, two areas really stand out to me: your music and your leadership in yoga sessions.
Okay.
Yeah. And the way I've known you through musicality has at the same time shown me your development, your curiosities, and your courage to express yourself, to not hold back. Pretty consistently inviting me to do the same, to open up and express and just be loud and just be unapologetic. Send it. Come on.
Yeah.
And also hearing the depth of the lyricism that you bring to your songs as descriptions of your own process of awakening, of recognizing your interconnection, of inviting others into that way of being on that road, has been really, really inspiring. Okay? And yeah, to just follow you in that way. And becoming more courageous in sharing your songs
Mm.
during your yoga classes or in other
Sure.
types of settings,
Yeah.
and having seen the ways in which you didn't want to share songs, and then moments that you did and you felt safe enough to do so.
Yeah.
Again, in social settings, it's harder to find collective safety when there are that many more witnesses.
Sure.
Because there's that many more points of interaction plus the whole. So it's been cool to watch you in that way.
I'd like, thank you for sharing that reflection. I wonder if it's grounding for some people to hear that. And thinking of a line in one of my songs that came through. My song's a song from life through me. That is, thank you to all my relations. I love you. Thank you to all my relations. I love you. And when that song came through, two things sort of co-present within the one, I suppose, is like, first of all, that song came into my heart and I realized, oh, this is deeply medicinal and healing for me, but it's not for me. It's for us. And that line in particular, initial times, sometimes it still happens when I sing it, but for me to profess, announce in that form that I love you, all my relations, and to feel and continue to feel the depth of origination of the meaning of that for me. It felt and feels radical on one sense to part of my humanness. And I will look out into the collective where there's a lot of failures of love. And it felt vulnerable, particularly, or exposing to open myself and share that truth with the world, with whoever hears it. It's not, not like on tour or anything like that. Just at times, ceremony or yoga or with friends or around a fire, or wherever it is. Yeah, there's sort of a coming out there.
Yeah.
I'm admitting that I love you, you, and you, the world, and like all of you, and all the pain and the sorrow and the suffering and the despair and the possibility and the creativity and the joy and the love and full spectrum. And it's like, okay. So, well, segue, connected though.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that.
Yeah. Topic of entheogens and plant medicines and psychedelics. You've shared that a little bit in our talk so far. We have a little bit of time left, but what role have they played in your life? What do you see? Anything to say on that topic?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Where do we start?
Yeah, I know, hey? What's the most important thing?
The most important thing. Similarly to this theme of integrity that I spoke of, that kind of weaves itself through my life, wanting to be in integrity, wanting to be true to my word, that kind of thing, which I've learned a lot about, of the ways in which I have not been in integrity and owning up to that and all of that.
Sure.
Another theme that I feel has been generative through my experiences with entheogens, especially, but not limited to, the ceremonial experiences, more specifically ceremonial containers. I've also had profound experiences in celebratory containers. For example, social and interpersonal dynamics, rich spaces that have really opened up. And I think that's the thread between those two types of experiences with entheogens, is that there's been a deepening understanding, like a felt understanding and knowing of my interconnection with all my relations. Really, I've felt it in different facets, in different ways. From like huge humanity-wide or cosmic perspective of all being connected, and the ways in which this microcosm of my body is an extension of the earth, for example, or the solar system. Okay.
That's an important one.
And in very intimate ways with specific people in my life that, through hardships that I may have encountered with them, recognizing the beauty and the medicine of the difficulty of that relationship, and like able to soften the edges that, as I mentioned earlier, prompt me to push people away or to keep people separate from me. Entheogens have allowed me to see the deep intimacy of the struggles that I've had in my life, or the pain I've endured, or the victimhood that I've endured in certain relationships, and to help to soften those, to help me understand that we are all related, that we are all here together, even if it on a very personal level feels like an affront or a violation or a crossing of boundaries. Entheogens have allowed me to see that, yes, on one level that is true, and pain is incurred, and there's a bigger lesson to why that dynamic has been present in my life, which has allowed me to rest into, whenever I feel that that kind of experience is happening, like last night at the event, where we've talked about it, we've processed it a little bit. I went into a protective fight or flight state and didn't realize it until we were out of the social environment. And I was able to come back to myself and realize that I was projecting onto you or transferring onto you my own inner conflict I didn't even know was happening. And so entheogens have helped me to see that I can lean into those interrelational dynamics that feel really sticky or crunchy or difficult or awkward or dangerous. And when I did, I was able to shift where I was from feeling quite uneasy and tense and anxious and like, what am I doing, to, whoa, okay, I'm feeling like me again. I'm feeling like I can be authentic again. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of reiterating that learning from entheogenic experiences. Yeah.
A few words you used that stood out to me are they've in some way supported an expansion of awareness, supported your felt somatic understanding of your interconnection and intimacy and connection with all of life and the universe and so forth. They seem to use, if I didn't say it already, softened you, softened maybe some of the defensive strategies that then likewise in hand supported an opening, being more open. The word coming up that we talk about that from time to time that sounds important to check in on here is integration. Because you're sort of making a bridge here, like you've shared experiences in these ceremonial and or celebratory or recreational context, and here you are in an experience where you're not in full-blown like entheogenic experience, but like an awareness of something sticky, and then how you centered, came back to yourself, opened, leaned in. And to me, it sounds like an expression of application of learnings or integration. So any thoughts or reflections you'd like to share on the topic of with integration?
Big topic.
Sure.
An important one in our field of therapy. What we learn in a therapeutic container, which to me includes entheogenic experiences, and how to bring it into our everyday.
Yeah.
And so I see that again, that paradox of we're all together here, and how do I bring it to this or this relationship or whatever immediate experience I have that is not a cosmic experience per se.
Sure.
And so it's integration to me is recognizing the bigger picture and bringing it into my everyday and applying it to my friendships, to nitty gritty. And that it like depending on the teaching or the insight that's come through from, again, whatever therapeutic container, the application of it, and it's like it's applying curiosity and courage to, oh, can I try this? It's almost like a playfulness of like, oh, I'm gonna see if this works in my relationship, which takes a lot of courage and bravery to do.
Yeah.
And it can take time to practice to get to a point where it feels accessible without the therapeutic container holding the experience.
I see.
Right. And it can take time. It can take days for some things. It can take weeks, months, years for other things.
Right.
And I think probably the most important element of integration is self-compassion. And surrounding ourselves with people who can reflect that to us as well. This compassion, patience, compassion, and exploration. Yeah. And that we're continuously integrating all the time.
Right.
Anyway, we don't get to a point of like, oh, I'm done my integration. I've integrated that experience and I'm done with it. I see life as a dynamic, multi-layered, multi-dimensional exploration of life that pulls us in different directions, that might, exacerbate a certain exploration and stall another, right? And so integration is nuanced and a dynamic experience. And it's important to find people with whom to share and to practice these things with. So establishing connections that are explicitly welcoming, like process-oriented connection, I think is an important piece of integration, where integration groups come into play.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
Or finding a therapist to integrate an entheogenic experience is important.
Right.
Speaking relationship intentions with the people in our lives and say, hey, it's usually easier with chosen family than it is with families of origin, where we receive a lot of conditioning from our families of origin, so it can be more difficult to apply and integrate with them. Eventually we can. But having a chosen family with whom we have these understandings of like, hey, I'm moving through something. Can I practice something with you? So yeah, I think that's another important facet. Yeah.
What comes to mind is a general simple phase of therapy framework that I appreciate, which is that can be integrative, so to speak, is address, process, and resolve. Depending on where we're at in a certain situation and depending on someone's, life path. It might be for the first time in therapy and they're 25, 30, 45, 60 years old, whatever. had clients who were 85, 89, and this process of addressing their life and the conditions of their current life and their past, which is to say, acknowledging, okay, what the impact of
honesty,
whatever. Yeah, honesty. Take some honesty.
Yeah.
Sometimes for people, it's like hitting rock bottom. What's coming to mind on the topic of integration there is like sometimes that's what's bringing somebody to a family member or a therapist, or you have an entheogenic experience and you come out, holy fuck, whoa, all that, whatever that might have been.
Yeah.
But say, for example, like revealing the impact of the past and whatever it might have been, trauma, disconnection, various forms of disintegration. This is like a reintegration then happening. Like, whoa, there's a lot of me that is in pieces. And this process of addressing, acknowledging with honesty the impact of whatever others' actions, one's own. The topic of avoidance is coming to mind. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to do that. Whatever. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to feel that. So just like seeing, I'm weaving this in with you on this topic of integration or reintegration and what we are integrating. Perhaps even what needs to be integrated, what's disintegrated, what's not right, what needs nurture and support, nourishment, what needs connection. And then the processing phase, like sometimes it's processing cognitively, emotionally, energetically, somatically. There's some things to process here that might take a certain amount of time on the relative plane of being a human being with a single nervous system and current capacities, vulnerabilities, resources. Process the feelings. Confrontation with the self, the shadow.
Being with, relating to these experiences. Spending time with. Which is also part of the process. Familiarity and intimacy with oneself.
Right.
Yeah.
This has been, for some people, and especially if we're talking like therapeutically speaking, where there's a part of their journey that it's like about a reconnection process. And even like learning how to feel, or learning how to be with, to tend and befriend these psycho-emotional parts, energetic experiences, somatic experiences, all increasing the capacity to like, which is going to increase somebody's emotional depth, emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, social intelligence, all these things. And just transitioning to this topless piece around resolve. Is there something I need to do differently now? Externally, internally, how do I relate to myself? The therapeutic approach of acceptance perhaps might involve like the address and process, say like, okay, there's some things I really need to look at here that are affecting my health, my overall health, my biopsychosocial, emotional health. But acceptance and commitment. Here's the resolve phase, is like things to actually do, perhaps differently, practices to engage in, consciously, intentionally forming new commitments. What am I committed to? And like conscious about the values that I'm living, and am I with myself and in integrity, and getting the support? Am I committed to getting the support, or showing up and saying yes to my gifts, or
leaning into the discomfort?
I was going to say, leaning in, doing the hard thing, saying the hard thing. Making amends, taking account for and offering apologies or forgiveness to oneself, or whatever it is. This to me seems like an example of like a process of integration, or like reintegration, wholeness, perhaps.
And I see in ways that the entheogenic experience can include potentially parts of all of that.
Yeah.
Or or perhaps an experience of that whole process in part, like what it would feel like if I was aware, processed, was with,
right.
and saw resolution.
Mm-hmm.
In an entheogenic experience can I've had this, and I've heard from many people, is like, oh, I saw my relationship with this person become better in my entheogenic experience.
Interesting.
I could see the potential of what will occur when I apply myself to the process. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, many have described some of these experiences as spiritual openings or heart opening, heart medicines. Depending on the medicine, we're not going into that exactly right now, but there's a theme of like a heart opening, kind of like, oh, wow, okay. So if my heart's open and I have that courage, which maybe is for some, like these medicines support a courage, an ability to feel whatever. But that's just, it's, yeah, thinking of, say, the example you gave, like I saw my relationship and how it could be if, though. It's the commitment piece, like acceptance, like, oh, things maybe haven't been as well as they could be. Here's my responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I could do this differently. I could, instead of the chronic contraction and concealment in my life, I could choose to reveal myself and like risk that vulnerability from an open-hearted space.
Yeah.
That's an application of wisdom, knowledge, understanding.
Yeah.
That then you've got some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have an impact on what happens here, my relationships, to myself, like my interiority too. So much.
And I always have an impact.
Right.
Because my choosing to not reveal myself impacts people and myself. Right. So that's the impact we already have anyway.
Totally.
So another note on the entheogenic experience, seeing the potential that could come from engaging in a new way, revealing oneself, being authentic, creates a somatic memory that we can come back to in our integration process that helps us to see that there is a way through that perhaps other types of therapy don't give that kind of embodied knowing that there's another possibility. It's not just a cognitive understanding that there's another possibility, but because we've in the entheogenic state can have an experience of what it feels like to reconcile. That becomes kind of like a guiding light during the integration process and the application process. And that's another big benefit that needs to be balanced, because sometimes we can find that resolution in an entheogenic experience. We can like, whoa, I leaned into the fear. Whoa, it's cleared, right? To a degree, until we then test it in our lives. But sometimes we're just shown what it is. We didn't actually go through the process of reconciling or repairing, but we were shown the possibility. And so the integration is, integrity are my actions in line with my thoughts, in line with my speech. Integrity. Am I walking and talking and thinking and impacting the world with that integrity? And that's the integration process, is bringing all aspects of us in line so that we recognize our agency and our power, because we all have that ability. We've lost it along the way, or convinced ourselves that we don't have power to influence or impact people or our own life.
The word mercy is coming to mind in this. Forgiveness, non-judgment, love, grief. Certainly we didn't go into it as much, but the experience of grief and
Yeah.
what one has to let go of
Mhm.
in a way, or shed and feel, um, die to,
Mhm.
you know, old versions of self, outmoded versions of being,
Mhm.
ways of thinking, feeling, perceiving.
Lost opportunities as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
big ones. Yeah.
As we wrap up here,
Mhm.
is there anything that feels
Mhm.
mm, like a discovery, perhaps, in this conversation, or something that you would like to, offer to anybody listening right now that, yeah, is speaking to you through you in your heart?
Yeah. Thank you. One piece that feels really important to remind people of
Hmm.
on this journey of remembering, from my perspective, and you're speaking to all my relations.
Yeah.
We are all related. We are all connected. We are all here together.
Mhm.
My reminder that I would want to tell people is you're never alone.
Mm.
You're never
Mm.
separate
Mm.
from others.
Mm.
There is someone that is willing to listen
Mm.
to you
Mm.
and witness you
Mm.
and wants you to be you.
Mm. Mhm.
That person exists in the world.
Mm.
I endeavor to represent that person.
Mm.
I understand that I may not feel like that person for everyone.
Mhm.
I get that.
Mhm.
But that's what I really want to remind people of. Find, look for that person.
Mm.
At the end of the day, we can be that person for ourselves,
Sure.
but that can also feel maybe not as accessible
Mm.
as, actually having other people in our world to
Mm.
reflect back to us that we
Mhm.
matter.
Mm.
Who we are matters. But that's what I want to
Mm.
just remind people of. It's like, you're
Mm.
never alone. I, for one, want to empower you to be you,
Yeah.
to be authentic,
Mhm.
empower you. You have power. I want you to hold power
Yeah.
and to feel confident and comfortable with that
Mhm.
and to practice
Mhm.
holding
Mhm.
your power.
Mm.
And because I know that I've heard from clients
Yeah.
and people who suffer
Yeah.
that they feel they can't relate to anyone else,
Mm.
or no one else understands what they're going through.
Mm.
And to a degree, that's true because everyone has their own experience. But it doesn't mean that we don't want to be connected,
Mhm.
even through whatever
Mhm.
experience is being
Mhm.
had. And that's something that I want to leave people with and encourage people to lean into connection,
Mhm.
to continue to explore that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm prompted in this moment, and we'll close here, but on being found.
Mm.
How might you like to be found if you wish? If people feel resonance to connect with you here?
Yeah. I have, I guess the easiest ways to connect with me would be Instagram, just as like an initial point of connection.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say, or I don't yet have a large presence in my practice or my offering out in the world. I have a website, which I need to get a domain. So I'll say Instagram is best.
Yeah.
Beforest. So
Be
B
Forest.
Forest. Yeah.
All
Is
right.
my tag. And from that point, I can share my website and share what it is that I offer. And yeah, I'd say that's probably the easiest way.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
you.
there you go, folks.
You. Oh, yeah. We're being watched
Yeah.
this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. We are this precious audience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here with me
Yeah.
today and
Thank
sharing
you.
in this dialogue.
Yeah.
I look forward to doing another one already.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
likewise.
And I feel like we're only just scratching the surface
Mhm.
in a way, but
Yeah.
a little taster for folks. And yeah. Yeah.
We ripped the band-aid off.
We did. We did it. We've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blessings on your day and
Thanks.
everybody.
You as well.
And yeah. Talk
Thank
to you.
you.
See you soon.
Mhm.